Hey everybody, it's Charles from HumbleMechanic.com. Today, taking your questions on cold start issues, prioritizing repairs, manual versus automatic transmissions, and more. This is episode 252 of the Humble Mechanic Podcast. If you want to get a question on a show like this, the way to do that is to email me, charles@HumbleMechanic.com. Put question for Charles in that subject line. Ask your question right at the top. Give me some space, and then give me the details of said question that will be right above that information. That helps me out a ton. And if you'd rather just listen, this and many other videos are available in audio platform on iTunes, Stitcher, Google, or of course over at HumbleMechanic.com. Finally, if you like the show and want to throw some support, that would be awesome. You can check out my Amazon store that I have, or of course join the crew membership program, which scores you discounts to places like Black Forest, Eastwood, MT Knives, Sonic Tools, Kerma, TDI, MyCanic, Petrol Box, and a whole bunch more, as well as you get the downloads of the VW Audi training manuals that I write for the classes that I teach. All that, of course, is linked down below in the description. That's wrapped up. Let's hit the questions. First one up is from Rick. I enjoy watching your videos. They are so informative and detailed. Can I ask your expert opinion on should I pay for the following repairs to my vehicle? Is it worth doing them, or will more issues likely come up again? It's definitely many, if not all, of what you talk about in your videos. I was quoted by my local dealership to repair both CV boots, coolant flange, evaporator purge valve, vacuum pump, upper hose, transmission cooler, all for the low price of $2,759.22. Ugh, we're just gonna call that $3,000. All right, Rick, you didn't mention what kind of car this is. I'm gonna guess this is a Mark V 2.5 liter, all of which those are super duper common failure points, and the vacuum pump failure is probably the one that shot that price up the most out of all of it. So if you took it to the dealership and they just wrote all this stuff up and said, here you go, Mr. Rick, here is your list of things you have to repair, that dealership did a really bad job helping you with this stuff, right? Part of my job as a dealership technician or a service advisor, hopefully working together, right, is to help customers decide this exact thing. Is this worth fixing all of this? Maybe we break it up into, we need to do this right now, we need to do this in the next 6 months, and this may be a problem down the road, but it's not something we need to worry about today. And that's how I always tried to prioritize things. I would put a little 1 next to the things that needed to be done right then and there. Your timing belt is about to explode, right? Or your coolant is leaking all over the place. Those are very, very, very important things. Then maybe the repair that got a number 2 next to it was your tires are, I don't know, 4/32, so this is gonna need to be done soon. And then the down the road thing is, hey, you know, in 10,000, 20,000, maybe 15,000 miles, we're gonna need to be looking at putting brakes on the car. If you are a technician or a service advisor watching this, please start doing this for your customers. Not only is it just the right thing to do, you're gonna sell more work. If your advisor just hands a piece of paper to a customer and says, here, buy this crap, nobody's gonna buy anything, right? Customer's pissed, you're mad at your advisor doesn't sell any work, and on and on. So let's look at Rick's concerns. Rick, it's really hard to say, hey, this is the right order without putting eyeballs on the things. Let's talk about the CV boots first. Are we talking about, on a Mark V, which is the really common way these fail, it's broken at the clamp on the inner part of the boot, or is the boot completely gone and the grease is all leaked out? Those would be prioritized differently for me. If it's broken a little bit at the clamp and just a little grease is coming out, I would put that in the like down the road, pretty soon, 5,000-10,000 mile category. If the boot's gone, well, it may not matter anyway because the axle joint might just be bad. You know, are we getting any noise from these outer boots, or boots, you didn't say outer or inner. Are we getting noise from these boots, or is it just leaking grease? All right, next we're looking coolant flange. It's probably leaking. That's probably one of those that we need to get done right away. That can cause catastrophic damage. That can leave us stranded, so we want to get that done. Purge valve, it's probably causing a check engine light, my guess. So we'll go ahead and put that in. Let's do that right now. Next, we're talking about a vacuum pump. It's probably leaking oil. This one could go either way. It could be leaking really, really bad, and we don't want to get that soaked on top of the transmission. But usually, it's not a dire thing that needs to be done right away. Also, I have done a DIY video if you want to check that out and see if that's something maybe you could tackle yourself. Also, there are reseal kits that I've found. I'll try and find one on Amazon and link it up for you, Rick, that you can reseal the pump, that outer cover, and the back part, and maybe that'll buy you some time. Maybe it won't, but it's worth looking at. Upper hose, not sure what upper hose that is, so we're going to put that in. Let's fix it right now. Transmission cooler line, I'm going to add that the same. It could be leaking transmission fluid or coolant, depending on how it's failed. So all in all, for $3,000, we have to look at the overall value of the car. Is this our only vehicle? What kind of car could we get for $3,000? This is a lot of issues that someone may be scared off of if we try and sell it. So what I would do, Rick, is I would call the dealership and I would say, hey, you gave me this write-up. Can you help me prioritize these things that need to be done right now versus can wait versus maybe way down the road, 6 months or so out. The other thing to consider, Rick, is maybe this is worth a second opinion at an independent shop or another dealership. Of course, you might be able to get a little bit better price that way as well. And if you take it somewhere else that will prioritize for you, well, to me, that's probably a place that I'd rather spend my money versus a place that won't. So all in all, I can't tell you definitely have to do all this stuff right now, but to me, I'd prioritize this stuff depending on the severity of failure of each of these components. That was my strategy at the dealership, still my strategy today, as a matter of fact. Some of those things to me, if they're not catastrophic, potentially catastrophic like tomorrow, can be put down a little bit. And then the other ones, of course, especially like the coolant flange, probably need to get that stuff fixed right away. All right, next one up is from John on an '01 Golf. The spray nozzle appears to have broken off. Can't find a diagram on how to replace it. The slot in the arm cover also appears to move with the arm. Do I need to take the motor out and apart and install a new nozzle tube, which might connect to the squirter hose? Thanks for any advice you have. Also, 12 turns to remove the door handle worked great. Of course it did, John. I spent a lot of time trying to perfect that method. So John, it sounds like you're talking about the rear wiper sprayer on a 2-door Golf. 4-door Golf, it's going to be basically the same. I would have loved to seen a picture of this. Is the whole thing broken off? Is it not spraying? Is it when you spray the rear spray, it doesn't spray out, but it leaks out of the hatch? I've seen all that stuff. We need to figure out why this is not spraying. So first step is we're going to take off the trim cover on the hatch. There's 2 Phillips head screws in the handles, so you need to take those off and then just carefully pry that away. Then what I would do is I would latch the trunk and have someone spray it and see how it sprays. If you see it spraying down the side, well, then it makes tracing the leak really easy. If you see nothing happening, well, we need to make sure our washer fluid is full. We need to make sure our pump is working. You can almost always hear those pumps, whether they're working or not. Does the front sprayer work? That's another thing I would check as well. Also, what happens, that little piece where the water actually shoots up onto the windshield out of gets clogged. It gets clogged with wax. It's kind of weird. You can take that off, gently twist and pry it away with a pair of pliers. And then I usually take a wire and de-strand it and just take a piece of wire and kind of fish through it and clean it out. Some rubbing alcohol would probably do pretty well. Blow it with a little compressed air and make sure that that's just not clogged rather than broken. Kind of like in the last question, a lot of this stuff is really hard to give you a definitive answer of this is what you need to do without seeing it. Sometimes that's actually seeing and putting your hands on it. Other times a picture can actually do pretty well. If it's the entire unit, then you pretty much have to replace the entire unit. There are also wiper delete kits that a lot of people like. I'm mixed on it. I think it looks great not having that rear wiper, but I really like having a rear wiper on that rare opportunity that I've used it. In fact, we have 4 cars, all hatchbacks or wagons. All 4 of them still have the rear wiper. So this might take a little bit of work on your part. If you flip that cover over, the cover that moves, again, take a pair of pliers and kind of twist and gently pull that nozzle away. Once that's off, go back and hit the sprayer. It's cool because it's going to shoot a big spray of water out the back. But if that works and that happens, then we know, okay, everything should be good. Clean that little, just the tiny, it's like that big, like less than an inch. Clean that little piece out and you'll probably be just fine. That's also adjustable. If you take a sharp pick in the hole, you can kind of move it around to adjust the spray pattern to make sure that it's spraying up the back window. I don't know, a spray about yay big, what is that, 12, 18 inches or so. That's about where you want it. Of course, you don't want it going on the roof and you don't want it just going where the wiper's not going to hit it either. All right, next up is from Andrew on a 2017 Golf. I have a 2017 Golf, which is fully stock and always been dealer serviced on 10K intervals. A couple weeks ago, 16-degree morning, it flashed the EPC light, but was running fine. The light turned off after shutting the car off and restarting. Later that week, on a very cold -5 degrees Fahrenheit morning, it began to run rough on the highway as it was down a cylinder. Although no light came on, the dealer read a cylinder 2 pressure too high intermittent fault. They had never seen that before. After calling VW, they informed me they recommended doing all 4 spark plugs under warranty. I'm really surprised they did all those under warranty. That's awesome. And suggested the issue was with the Costco gas I've been buying, which is top tier. Yes, I have made that mistake before. Costco is top tier fuel. I know the car calls for plugs at 40K per the manual, but any thoughts on the code and if gas could really be the issue? So, Andrew, seeing this cylinder pressure code triggered a memory of there was a time where when that code came up and a car came in for it, it was an immediate call to VW tech line. You weren't supposed to do anything. You were just supposed to call Volkswagen. That has seemed to have since been taken off. But what essentially it seems like this code means, it's something with the knock sensor, crank sensor, cam sensor, and engine noise. So this could be a misfire. It could be something really, really strange with engine vibration on that rotation of crankshaft, that position of camshaft, and the knock sensor picking it up. Initially, when I read that, I thought that there was a software update for that and many, many other concerns. Techline would have probably advised the technician to do that, a software update if there was one. Without knowing the ECM part number at the software level, I don't know if there's a software update for sure, 100% for sure or not. Again, that's one of those things, one of those Techline things that it's a very early step in the Techline process that, hey, let's look at the ECM software and make sure it is the most up to date. Even if the update doesn't technically cover this issue, it may indirectly cover it. So based on the parameters of this fault being stored, spark plug gap is one that definitely could have been an issue. I don't know if the technician checked spark plug gap when they took them out. I don't know that I would have checked that either, so I'm not hating on the tech that did this at all, right? Because if the spark plug gap is the problem, and you change it around before you send that spark plug back to Volkswagen, they may say the spark plug was good and kick the warranty claim. So one of the problems, good and bad for technicians on a warranty job, is you can't take the part apart. You have to take the part out exactly as it is and ship it back to VW. So we don't always get to know the exact pinpoint point of the failure. Now, this could be a fuel issue. I wouldn't say it's because of Costco, because you are right, Costco is on the top tier fuel list, but it could be poor quality fuel from Costco, if that makes sense. It's not saying that Costco has bad fuel, it's saying this particular fuel you got at Costco was bad. This fuel could have came from anywhere. Could be high water concentration, too high ethanol concentration. There are some tests that the dealership can run on fuel, but it's not something they typically do. Because what are you going to do? You're going to do all these tests and say, yep, it was fuel, and tell the customer to get gas somewhere else. Usually what we would do is tell the customer, hey, next time you fill up, go fill up somewhere else and let's see what happens. I have seen this fault just kind of be a weird anomaly where the stars aligned and something said, I'm freaking out, and that kind of caused the issue. Could be a very subtle misfire that could have caused the issue, which could have easily been the spark plugs. Could have easily been a little bit of gunk in the fuel, and that caused the issue too. So this is something I probably wouldn't spend much of my life being concerned about, especially if it never happens again, right? If next time it gets cold, which I think this week's supposed to be really cold, and it doesn't happen, I probably wouldn't worry about it. Then we can blame it on the plugs, we can blame it on the fuel, either way. If you start to see, like, when it gets cooler and cooler and cooler, the car getting upset more and more and more, switch fuel stations and see what happens. Hopefully it was just the spark plugs that fixed it. I'm surprised they put all 4 in though, which is really weird. That's typically not how it happens. Usually you can only do 1, and then if another one fails, you do 1, and then if another one fails, then you get to do the rest of them. So I'm kind of surprised they did all 4, and I'm surprised they put 4 plugs in under warranty. That's typically not covered. So you may have got away with one there. Not saying that, Andrew, you were trying to get away with one. I don't know. I don't know the whole story, right, between the conversation of the technician and the tech line. That can get kind of squirrely. Either way, you got new spark plugs, so I'd reset that maintenance clock for 40K and put them in at whatever your mileage is now plus 40,000 miles. But that's a weird fault that I think technicians are probably almost always going to call VW on, because it's not something you see every day. And there's a whole list, like a whole page of things that can cause that fault. And it all sort of centers around crankshaft, camshaft, and knock sensor orientation. As I'm saying that, I'm thinking maybe we're looking at a chain issue. Possible, kind of an out there theory, but the top issues were fuel and spark plug gap specifically. So Andrew, hopefully that took care of it. All right, last one of the day comes from James, thinking about buying a 2018 Golf Sportwagen S. Do you feel like the manuals are more reliable than the automatic? James, great question. The truth is I feel like it's about the same. Each presents its own issue, right? A manual transmission, you have the clutch that wears out eventually. It may be 200,000 miles, but eventually the clutch wears out. Automatic, you have service intervals, you have potential for failure inside of that box, just like you do in the manual. To me, this is just my opinion, guys, do whatever you want. Buy the one that you want and don't worry too much about the maintenance or reliability of it at this point. It's not like those gearboxes are exploding at 10,000 miles. It's not like clutches are burning up at 300 miles, although I've seen that, but that was 100% driver error. So if you want a manual, get the manual. If you want an automatic, get the automatic. If you're not sure, what I really recommend is drive both of them and see which one you like. You may be the save the manuals, I'm never driving anything without 3 pedals kind of person. Gotta have a manual transmission because I feel so connected to the car. You know, all the things you read. And you may get in that manual and go, okay, this is great. Then you may get in the auto and just put it in drive and go, you know what? This ain't bad either. Or maybe you sit in DC traffic on a Friday afternoon on 95 or anywhere in the DC area, and you're gonna hate life driving a manual transmission. For me, I like them both, right? R32's manual transmission, absolutely love it. Enjoy every minute of driving it, except in traffic, it's not super fun. If I were to buy a new Golf R, it would be a DSG, and it would be a DSG for a couple of reasons. One, the DSG is tunable, and it's still fun to drive stock. I enjoy being able to put it in drive and just go, right? Autopilot to the grocery store or early in the morning to work, whatever. We have a sport mode, we can throw it in sport mode, we can paddle shift, we can, shift up and down with the shifter if we want to do that. I think all that is really cool. For me in my household though, my wife doesn't drive manual transmission, so that's one less car she's going to be able to drive. Now maybe that's good. Maybe you don't want your wife to drive this Golf Sportwagen, or maybe you don't want the other person in your household to drive the Sportwagen. It's all individual basis. But man, really when it comes to reliability right now on that car, it's about the same. We also don't have a ton of them really high miled up, so that's something to consider too. The pure number in high mileage for research purposes is not there. 2018 is only a year old. Either way, what is it? 6 years, 72,000 mile warranty on either one of them. So you're covered for a long time if you do have a failure. So what I would do if I wasn't sure, and I'd take myself down to the dealership, I'd drive both of them, see which one I liked better. You might find that it's really hard to find a manual transmission because the number is so much less. You may find that it's really easy to find a manual transmission and you're going to save $1,000 and you got what you want. This is such a personal decision that on a new car, I don't really worry as much about reliability, especially considering the fact that most people don't keep their car up to or beyond really that far the warranty point. And if you're 6 years 72K or 5 years 72K warranty, whatever it is, that's a long time. That's longer than most people keep their cars. So James, man, go drive it, see which one you like better. Worry about the reliability of it later. I would rather have a car that I like to drive all the time, right? All the miles, than buy a car that maybe I didn't like as much, but I felt a little bit better about the reliability when truthfully, even if that transmission was the best transmission ever built, that doesn't mean that your transmission is not going to have a problem. We just don't know. It could be some weird defect in your transmission that makes it go kaboom 1 mile after your warranty expires, or that next transmission in the next car that was built could last for 300,000 miles with no maintenance and never have an issue. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. Questions, comments, drop them down below. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching or listening, and I will see you again next time.